Elvis Presley sat alone in his private office at Graceland, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the mahogany desk his father Vernon had given him years ago. He was sorting through a stack of mail that had accumulated over the past week when his fingers found an envelope that felt different from the rest. Thinner, older, with his name written in shaky handwriting he didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice, dated 3 days earlier. The letter was from James Crawford, a groundskeeper who had worked at Graceland for 8 years. A man Elvis had seen countless times, but whose name he was ashamed to realize he had never known until this moment. "Mr. Presley," the letter began, "I'm writing this because I can't stay silent anymore. You need to know what your closest friends are doing behind your back, what they say about you when they think no one who matters is listening, what they're planning while you trust them with everything." Elvis felt his chest tighten. He continued reading, each word landing like a punch to the gut. "Last Tuesday, I was trimming the hedges near the pool house when I heard them inside. Red West, Sonny West, Lamar Fike, all of them. They were laughing about how easy it is to control you. Red said, and I quote, 'Elvis is so drugged up half the time, he doesn't even know what contracts he's signing. We could be taking twice as much and he'd never notice.' The king's hands began to tremble. These weren't just employees. These were the men he called the Memphis Mafia, his inner circle, the friends who had been with him since the beginning, the ones he trusted with his life, his money, his secrets. The letter continued with more details. Dates, times, specific conversations James had overheard. How they mocked Elvis's weight gain. How they called him the cash cow when discussing their personal expenses charged to his accounts. How they had been secretly negotiating book deals to expose his private life for profit. But the worst part came at the end. "Mr. Presley, I saw Sonny West in your medicine cabinet last week. He wasn't just looking. He was switching bottles, replacing pills. I don't know with what, but I know what I saw. I'm an old man with nothing to gain from lying to you. I just couldn't watch them destroy you anymore. You've been nothing but kind to people like me, the ones who work in the background. You deserve to know who your real friends are. And sir, those men are not your friends." Elvis set the letter down with shaking hands. For a moment he couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin. Everything he had believed about loyalty, about friendship, about the people closest to him was crumbling. He thought about all the times he had defended them. When people said the Memphis Mafia was taking advantage of him, he had always brushed it off. "They're my boys," he would say. "They've been with me through everything." But now, sitting in the quiet of his office with James Crawford's careful handwriting staring back at him, Elvis understood the truth. They hadn't been with him. They had been with his money, his fame, his influence. And worse, they might have been actively harming him, controlling him through the very medications he relied on. Elvis stood up slowly. There was no rage on his face, just a cold determination that would have frightened anyone who knew him well. He walked to his desk phone and dialed a single number. "Charlie," he said when Charlie Hodge answered. "Get everyone to the living room right now. Red, Sonny, Lamar, Joe, everyone. Tell them it's an emergency meeting." "Everything okay, E?" Charlie asked, concern in his voice. "Just get them there, 5 minutes." Elvis hung up and looked at himself in the mirror above the fireplace. He saw a man who had given everything to the people around him. Money, cars, houses, jewelry, opportunities they never would have had without him. And in return, they had given him betrayal. He picked up James Crawford's letter, folded it carefully, and placed it in his jacket pocket. Then he walked out of his office and down the grand staircase of Graceland, his footsteps echoing through the mansion that had become both his kingdom and his prison. The Memphis Mafia was already gathering in the living room when Elvis entered. Red West was lounging on the white sofa, his feet up on the coffee table. Sonny West was by the bar, already pouring himself a drink even though it was barely past noon. Lamar Fike sat in Elvis's favorite chair, laughing at something on the television. Joe Esposito was on the phone, probably making some deal in Elvis's name. They all looked up when he walked in, their expressions shifting from casual comfort to curiosity. "Hey, E," Red said with that easy smile that Elvis now realized had been fake all along. "Charlie said it was urgent. What's going on? You finally decide to do that European tour." Elvis didn't answer immediately. He walked to the center of the room, standing where he could see all of them. For a moment, he just looked at each face, men he had known for over a decade, men he had called brothers. "I want to tell you all a story," Elvis said, his voice quiet but carrying that distinctive power that had made him the king. About trust. The room grew quiet. Something in Elvis's tone made them all pay attention. When I was starting out playing those little clubs in Memphis, I didn't have anything. Sam Phillips took a chance on me at Sun Records, but even he didn't really believe I'd amount to much. You know who did believe in me? The people nobody noticed. The janitor at the studio who would stay late to let me practice. The old woman who ran the diner where I couldn't always afford to pay, but she'd feed me anyway. Elvis paused, his eyes moving across their faces. Those people, the ones at the bottom, they saw something in me when I was nobody. And when I made it big, I promised myself I'd never forget them. I'd never become one of those stars who only cares about other famous people. I'd treat everyone with respect, from the guy parking cars to the president of RCA. Red shifted uncomfortably. Sonny had stopped drinking, the glass frozen halfway to his lips. But somewhere along the way, Elvis continued, I forgot that respect goes both ways. I surrounded myself with people I thought were loyal, people I thought cared about me, not just what I could give them. I called you the Memphis Mafia because I thought we were family. Families protect each other, right? Of course, Joe Esposito said quickly. We've always got your back. Elvis reached into his pocket and pulled out the letter. He didn't unfold it, just held it up. This is from James Crawford. Any of you know who that is? Blank stares all around. That's what I thought, Elvis said. He's worked here for 8 years. 8 years of taking care of these grounds, making sure Graceland looks perfect. And not one of you knows his name. But he knows yours. He knows all of your names. And he knows what you've been saying when you think nobody important is listening. The color drained from Red West's face. Sonny set his drink down with a shaky hand. He heard you, Red, talking about how I'm so drugged up, I don't know what I'm signing. He heard you calling me the cash cow. He heard you discussing those book deals you're planning, ready to sell out every private moment of my life for a quick payday. Elvis, that's not, Red started. Shut up, Elvis said, and the quiet fury in his voice was more frightening than if he had screamed. And you, Sonny, James saw you in my medicine cabinet, switching pills. Were you trying to keep me dependent, keep me confused, make sure I needed you? Sonny's mouth opened, but no words came out. How much have you stolen from me? Elvis asked, looking at Lamar. Not just money, though God knows there's been plenty of that, but how much trust have you stolen? How much friendship did you fake? How many times did you laugh at me behind my back while spending my money? The room was deathly quiet. Outside, they could hear birds singing in the Memphis afternoon, oblivious to the destruction happening inside Graceland. The saddest part, Elvis said, his voice breaking slightly, is that I would have given you anything. All you had to do was be honest, be real friends. Instead, you played me for a fool. Well, the fool just wised up. He looked at each of them one more time. You're done, all of you. You've got 1 hour to get your things and get out of Graceland. After that, security will escort you off the property. Your credit cards, your cars, your access to my accounts, it's all canceled as of right now. Elvis, you can't be serious, Joe Esposito protested. We've been with you for 15 years. No, Elvis corrected. You've been with my money for 15 years, there's a difference. This is insane. Red West stood up, his face red with anger. You're going to believe some gardener over us, your oldest friends. Elvis laughed, but there was no humor in it. That gardener has more integrity in his little finger than all of you combined. He had nothing to gain from telling me the truth. You had everything to lose from me finding out, and now you have. You'll regret this, Sonny said, finding his voice. You need us. Who's going to handle your schedule, your security, your... People who actually care about their job, not just their paycheck, Elvis interrupted. People who see me as a human being, not a cash machine. People like James Crawford, who noticed something was wrong and had the courage to speak up even though he knew none of you would ever think he mattered. Elvis walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. You know what the real tragedy is? I loved you guys, really loved you. I thought we were building something together, but you were just building your bank accounts. 1 hour, don't make me call the cops. He left them standing there in stunned silence and walked back up to his office. His hands were shaking as he picked up the phone and called his lawyer. Mike, it's Elvis. I need you here right now. Bring the accountant too. We're doing a complete audit of everything the Memphis Mafia has had access to. Every contract, every transaction, every penny. Is everything all right? Mike asked. No, Elvis said honestly, but it will be. As he hung up, Elvis walked to the window and looked out at the grounds of Graceland. He could see James Crawford in the distance, carefully tending to the rose garden. The man had no idea his letter had just changed everything. Elvis picked up the phone again and called down to the security office. "This is Elvis. I want you to find James Crawford and bring him to my office. Tell him it's important, but he's not in any trouble. In fact, tell him he just became the most important employee at Graceland." While he waited, Elvis thought about all the warning signs he had ignored. The whispered conversations that stopped when he entered a room, the excessive spending that was always explained away, the way his supposed friends treated the staff, like they were invisible, insignificant. He thought about how isolated he had become, surrounded by people who filtered everything through their own interests. How many real relationships had he missed because the Memphis Mafia had built a wall around him, keeping out anyone who might threaten their positions? There was a knock at the door. "Come in," Elvis called. James Crawford entered, looking nervous. He was a man in his 60s, wearing simple work clothes, his hands still dirty from the garden. He stood near the door like he wasn't sure he should be there. "Mr. Crawford," Elvis said, standing up, "please sit down." "Mr. Presley, if this is about the letter, It is," Elvis said, "and I want to thank you. You saved me, James, you really did." James looked surprised. I couldn't watch it anymore. You've always been kind to folks like me. You remember people's names, ask about their families. Those men, they don't even see us. We're just part of the furniture to them." "Not anymore," Elvis said. "They're gone, all of them, fired as of 20 minutes ago." James's eyes widened. "Sir, I didn't mean to cause—" "You didn't cause anything," Elvis interrupted. "You revealed what was already there. You showed me the truth when everyone else was content to let me live a lie. That takes courage." Elvis leaned forward. "James, I need people around me I can trust, people who see things clearly and aren't afraid to speak up. Would you consider a promotion? Head of staff operations. You'd oversee all the employees at Graceland, make sure everyone is treated fairly, and report directly to me." James was speechless for a moment. "Mr. Presley, I don't know anything about that kind of job." "You know about people," Elvis said. "You know about integrity. You know the difference between real loyalty and fake friendship. That's more valuable than any business degree." Down below, Elvis could hear raised voices. The Memphis Mafia was being escorted out, probably making scenes, probably threatening lawsuits. He didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe. "Can I ask you something?" Elvis said to James. "Of course, sir." "In your letter, you mentioned they were switching my medications. Do you know what they were replacing them with?" James hesitated, then nodded. "I followed Sonny one day. He went to a doctor downtown, not your regular one, came back with pills that looked similar, but, Mr. Presley, I think they were giving you stronger doses, keeping you manageable." Elvis closed his eyes. The betrayal was even deeper than he had imagined. They hadn't just been stealing from him. They had been controlling him, keeping him dependent, making sure he needed them. "We're going to fix this," Elvis said, opening his eyes. "All of it starting today." Over the next few hours, as lawyers and accountants began arriving at Graceland, the full scope of the Memphis Mafia's betrayal became clear. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in unauthorized expenses. Contracts signed in Elvis's name that benefited them more than him. Side deals with promoters that skimmed profits. It was systematic, organized, and had been going on for years. But it was the medical manipulation that hurt the most. Elvis's doctor, brought in for an emergency consultation, confirmed that the pills in several of his prescription bottles were not what the labels indicated. He had been being over-medicated, deliberately kept in a fog that made him easier to control. "We could press criminal charges," the lawyer said. "This is fraud, theft, potentially even poisoning." Elvis thought about it. Part of him wanted to see them punished, wanted them to face consequences for what they had done. But another part of him, the part that still remembered the good times before the money and fame corrupted everything, just wanted them gone. "No charges," he said finally. "Just make sure they can never come near me or Graceland again, and make sure everyone in the industry knows what they did. Let their reputations be their punishment." As the sun set over Memphis, Elvis stood on the front steps of Graceland watching the last of the Memphis Mafia's belongings being removed. Red West was loading boxes into a truck, his face a mask of bitterness. He looked up and caught Elvis's eye. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Two men who had once been as close as brothers, now strangers separated by an ocean of broken trust. Red opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then closed it and turned away. There was nothing left to say. Elvis turned and walked back into Graceland. James Crawford was in the hallway, organizing the staff schedules with a natural leadership that had probably always been there, just never given the chance to shine. "Mr. Crawford," Elvis called. "Yes, sir." "From now on, I want you to make sure every employee here knows their voice matters. If they see something wrong, they speak up. If they have an idea, they share it. No more invisible people at Graceland." James smiled. "Yes, sir, that's exactly how it should be." That night, Elvis couldn't sleep. He walked through his mansion, seeing it with new eyes. Without the Memphis Mafia's constant presence, the house felt different. Quieter, but also cleaner somehow, like a poison had been extracted. He found himself in the kitchen at 3 a.m. making a sandwich. Maria, one of the night cleaning staff, came in and froze when she saw him. "Oh, Mr. Presley, I'm sorry, I'll come back." "No, please," Elvis said. "Come in, would you like a sandwich? I make a mean peanut butter and banana." Maria looked shocked. In all her years working at Graceland, none of the Memphis Mafia had ever acknowledged her, much less offered to make her food. As they sat at the kitchen table, eating sandwiches and talking about her grandchildren, Elvis realized this was the most genuine conversation he'd had in years. No agenda, no manipulation, just two people sharing a meal in the middle of the night. "Mr. Presley," Maria said quietly, "we all knew what they were doing to you. The staff, I mean, we could see it, but we didn't think you'd believe us over them." "I should have seen it sooner," Elvis admitted. "I got so caught up in having an entourage, in feeling important, that I forgot what really matters." The next morning, Elvis called a meeting with all of Graceland's staff. Groundskeepers, cleaners, cooks, security guards, everyone who kept the estate running. Many of them had never been in the main house's formal dining room before. "I owe all of you an apology," Elvis began. "For years, you've been treated as invisible by the people I trusted most. That ends now. From this moment forward, you're not just employees, you're the people who make Graceland what it is. Your opinions matter, your comfort matters, you matter." He announced raises for everyone, proper benefits, and an open-door policy. If anyone ever felt disrespected or saw something wrong, they could come directly to him or to James Crawford. "The Memphis Mafia is gone," he said. "We're going to build something better, something based on mutual respect, not on who has the most access to power." In the weeks that followed, the change at Graceland was remarkable. Without the toxic influence of the Memphis Mafia, the entire atmosphere shifted. Staff members who had worked in fearful silence for years began to smile, to talk, to contribute ideas. Elvis discovered talents he never knew existed among his employees. His driver, Robert, turned out to have excellent business instincts and became an informal advisor. His cook, Betty, had connections in the music industry that led to new collaboration opportunities. The very people the Memphis Mafia had deemed unimportant were actually invaluable. The media, of course, had a field day with the story. "Elvis fires entire inner circle," the headlines screamed. "King dethroned by his own court." But Elvis didn't care about the headlines. He was too busy rebuilding, not just his personal circle, but his entire approach to life and fame. 3 months after the firing, Red and Sonny West published their tell-all book as threatened. But it backfired spectacularly. The public, having heard about how they had betrayed Elvis's trust, saw the book for what it was, a desperate cash grab by disgraced former employees. It sold poorly and destroyed what was left of their reputations. Meanwhile, James Crawford had transformed Graceland's operations. He implemented a system where every employee, regardless of position, could submit suggestions for improvements. Some of the best ideas came from the most unexpected sources. A janitor's suggestion about tour routes increased gift shop revenue by 30%. A gardener's idea for a memorial garden became one of Graceland's most beloved features. But perhaps the most significant change was in Elvis himself. Free from the constant manipulation and control, his health improved. His mind cleared. He began writing music again, real music that came from his soul rather than what his handlers told him would sell. One evening, 6 months after everything changed, Elvis found himself in his office with James Crawford, reviewing staff reports. It was a comfortable routine they had developed, treating each other as equals despite their different roles. "James," Elvis said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Always, sir." "Why did you write that letter? Really? You could have lost your job. They could have made your life miserable if they'd found out." James was quiet for a moment, then said, "My daddy taught me something when I was young. He said the measure of a man isn't how he treats his equals, but how he treats those who can do nothing for him. You always treated me and the staff with dignity, even when you didn't have to. Those men, they showed their true character by how they treated us when they thought nobody important was watching." "And you showed your character by speaking up when it mattered," Elvis replied. "I guess we all show our character eventually," James said. "The only question is whether anyone's paying attention when we do." Elvis nodded, thinking about all the times he hadn't paid attention, all the signs he had missed because he was too focused on the wrong things. A year later, Elvis gave his comeback performance in Las Vegas. It was being hailed as his greatest show in a decade. The papers wrote about his renewed energy, his clarity, his connection with the audience. But the moment that mattered most to Elvis happened before the show. In his dressing room, surrounded not by the Memphis Mafia, but by genuine friends and employees who had proven their loyalty through respect rather than flattery, he received a small package. Inside was a simple card from the Graceland staff. All 43 of them had signed it. The message was brief: "Thank you for seeing us." Elvis looked around the room at the new faces in his inner circle. His new head of security, Marcus, who had worked his way up from the night shift. His personal assistant, Sarah, who had started as a receptionist. His advisor, Robert, the driver who turned out to have a brilliant mind for business. None of them looked the part of a celebrity entourage. They didn't wear matching jackets or expensive jewelry. They didn't call themselves by some intimidating group name. They were just good people who did their jobs with integrity and treated everyone around them with respect. "5 minutes, Mr. Presley," the stage manager called. Elvis stood up, straightened his iconic white jumpsuit, and looked at himself in the mirror. He saw a man who had learned one of life's most important lessons: that true loyalty can't be bought, true friendship can't be faked, and the people who really matter are often the ones everyone else overlooks. As he walked toward the stage, Elvis passed a janitor mopping the hallway. The man looked up, surprised to see the star in this back corridor. "Good evening," Elvis said, stopping. "I'm Elvis. What's your name?" "Tom, sir," the janitor replied, clearly stunned. "Well, Tom, thanks for keeping this place clean. It matters more than you know." He continued to the stage, leaving Tom staring after him in amazement. The crowd roared as Elvis appeared, but he took a moment before starting his first song to look out at all those faces. Thousands of people, each with their own story, their own struggles, their own worth that had nothing to do with what they could offer him. "Before we start," Elvis said into the microphone, his voice carrying across the packed auditorium, "I want to dedicate this show to someone. His name is James Crawford. He tends the gardens at Graceland. Most of you have probably never heard of him. But he saved my life by having the courage to tell me the truth when everyone else was content with lies. James, if you're watching this on TV back home, this one's for you, friend." And with that, Elvis launched into Suspicious Minds, the lyrics taking on new meaning after everything he had been through. The crowd went wild, but Elvis wasn't performing for them, not really. He was performing for James Crawford, for Maria the night cleaner, for Tom the janitor, for all the invisible people who kept the world turning while others took the credit. The Memphis Mafia was history, a cautionary tale about what happens when loyalty becomes exploitation, when friendship becomes manipulation, when the people closest to you become your greatest threat. But from their ashes had risen something better, a community built on genuine respect, where everyone's voice mattered, where character was measured not by proximity to power, but by how you treated those who had none. As the final notes of the concert rang out and the crowd erupted in applause, Elvis took his bow. But in his pocket, carefully folded and always with him now, was James Crawford's letter. A reminder that sometimes the most important truths come from the most unexpected sources, and that real loyalty, real friendship, real respect, they don't come with a price tag or a title. They come from seeing every person as valuable, regardless of their position. They come from having the courage to speak truth to power. They come from understanding that the mighty only fall when they forget that everyone matters. The king had learned his lesson. The kingdom would never be the same. And somewhere in Memphis, in a modest house far from Graceland's gates, James Crawford sat with his wife watching the concert on their small television. When Elvis dedicated the show to him, his wife gasped and grabbed his hand. "You never told me he knew your name," she said. James smiled. "He knows everyone's name now. That's what makes him the real king."